5 and possibly 2 seconds to dip down a couple of hundred feet and then level off at 530 miles an hour. Now, intuitively, as an engineer, you'd say that's patently ridiculous, but it's no good just saying it's ridiculous if you're an engineer. You have to go and do some calculations to prove it, which is precisely what I did. I did a computer physics model using atoms, which possibly 1 or 2 people in the audience might know. It's a very expensive engineering dynamics simulation program, and we programmed in the flight path the plane would have to do from the last beacon position in order to go level off and knock down these light poles. And down at the bottom there, we have the change in velocity with which we can work out the acceleration, which is basically the number of G's you pull in an aircraft. You might be familiar with that term. Now, in a state-of-the-art military fighter jet, you might be able to pull several negative G's. By that I mean possibly 4 at the outside in a state-of-the-art military fighter jet. Now, the data recorder for this aircraft only records to -2G. That's how certain they are. The aircraft is never going to go outside that envelope. It records from -2 to +6G. To pull off this manoeuvre, the aircraft pulled -9.5G, followed by a 6.3G pull-up, all taking place in 2 seconds, from a pilot who had learned on a single-engine Cessna, who was refused to fly on insurance purposes because of his piloting skills, who spoke very poor English and had never flown this aircraft. He never set foot in a real Boeing 757, ever, except for a brief period of time in a simulator. And he has managed to pull off this absolutely stunning manoeuvre, which is several orders of magnitude outside the performance envelope of this aircraft. It's patently, physically, absolutely so far out, it's impossible. But now, I wasn't satisfied with the beacon reading, because I had been informed by another flight data recorder contact of mine that occasionally these beacon readings can be out. So I thought, well, this isn't good enough. We have to get another position fix for the last point of this aircraft, because as I say, even if the aircraft is 273 feet up, if it turns out it's a long way from the building, it does have time to dip down. Now, we have 2 kinds of altitude in the aircraft. We have pressure altitude, which is via air pressure, and radio altitude, which is bouncing the waves off the ground. If you take the difference between the two, you have a ground map. Because if you fly over a hill, your pressure altitude goes down, your radio altitude goes down, your pressure stays the same. If you map a difference between the two, you have a ground map. The ground map, taken directly from the radar data in the flight data recorder, is shown on the bottom there in the blue. The top is a ground elevation profile map I got from the USGS, which is United States Geographic Survey. And you simply plot 2 lines on the map and it gives you a profile. The end of it is at the wall of the Pentagon. Now, as you can see, there's actually a very good correlation between the 2 graphs. It's a bit difficult to see here because I've squashed them down to fit 2 on the same screen. But if you look at the red lines, you can see especially there's a very big dip in the middle, which correlates precisely in terms of the depth of the dip and its duration. And I'll show you them both in full now. If you look at these red circles, these are what I used as my reference point. This is the United States Geographic Survey map, and this is the radar data from the aircraft. So if I just cycle a couple of times between them, you can see how close the match is. Now, with regards to this map, because there was some controversy over the angle the plane was heading in at, I actually printed off 30 of these over 30 degrees, different entry angle. If you deviate that within about 8 degrees in either way, the distance of that dip to the Pentagon stays exactly the same. So even if we had the angle of the aircraft a little bit wrong, the distance would still be precisely the same. So by knowing how far that dip is from the Pentagon and looking at the radar, we ought to be able to work out precisely how far the plane was from the Pentagon at the last point, which I've done here with a graph. And according to the radar data, the last point is 288 meters from the face of the Pentagon. Now, the red cross there, that is where the radar data from the ground elevation map puts the last position of the plane. Those two bands there are from the radio beacon from Reagan National Airport. And you can see it's an extremely good correlation. So this was confirmation to me that the final point of the aircraft we had very accurate to within 100 meters. And again, you have to deviate from this very significantly from the plane to be able to drop down and hit those light poles. Now, we've been debating this on a lot of internet forums, and several so-called professionals have stated that the flight data recorder must have had lag. What they're trying to suggest is that if what is being recorded happened a couple of seconds ago because of processing, this explains the difference, because once you've crashed, you lose the last 2 seconds. Effectively, that's what they're suggesting. And if you've lost the last few seconds, the plane could be a very long way from the building. So, not to be put off, we phoned L3, who manufacture the exact flight data recorder put in Flight 77, and this was done 2 days ago. And I'll play you the phone call.
L3 at Santana, may I help you?
Yeah, hi Ed. It's Rob again. I'm sorry to bother you again. You know what?
Hello?
I forgot to hit record on the recorder, and I forgot the names of the TSOs and the...
Okay, for the flight data recorder, it's TSO 124.
Right.
The CVR, well, you don't care about CVR.
No, just flight data recorder.
Right, and then the Eurocade spec is EURCAE ED55.
And those both regulations
applies to the flight data, airborne flight data recorders.
And they both state that you have to be in compliance with no more than a 0.5 lag.
I don't know if they both say it, but I believe the ED55 does say it. Now the 124 might, but I'd have to go look into that.
Okay, but all your recorders you build to that standard, right?
Oh, yes, we have to. All of our boxes are TSO'd.
Okay, and they're
especially going on commercial aircraft. Military, that's a whole different ballgame sometimes.
Okay, but they're all built to standard of no more than a 0.5 second lag.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much,
welcome.
Ed. Okay.
Right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Recorders have to be made to less than a 0.5 of a second lag, and he's saying yes. It's actually a regulation for the flight data recorder industry. What happens to the plane has to be in the flight data recorder chip a maximum of half a second afterwards. That's regulated. And these are the people who make the flight data recorder. So we know the last segment can't be more than approximately 1 second before impact. I say 1 second because the lag is half a second, but it's possible that the partial second before that may have been caught up in the data bus, and if the thing's been destroyed, at the outside you might lose a second. Again, 230 meters per second, 1 second, that gives us a distance of 230 meters. The radar says 288 meters, and the beacon from Reagan National Airport puts it a little bit more than that, but about 300 meters. So we've got 3 very good corroborative pieces of evidence placing the aircraft precisely where we think it is, all of which means it's physically impossible for the plane to have caused the physical damage at the building. I'm going to show you the CCTV footage taken outside the Pentagon, which took 5 years and a court order to have released. It was only released under pressure, legal pressure from the Judicial Watch. And there's 2 different films, and these were all played on the news to lots of ecstatic newscasters who said, look, you can see the plane. Now, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to let you watch it and make up your own mind as to whether you see a 100 and